We've had snow on the ground for a little over 2 weeks now, but the thing is, winter is still a week away. Last year, the coldest temperature that we saw was 0 degrees, but we didn't see that temperature for almost a month from now, and we just had that temperature last night. So we need to make sure we have all the kinks worked out of our heating system because winter is still coming. One of the biggest struggles that we had last year was the quality of wood. We showed up to our property pretty late in the year, and then we were busy with a lot of other things, and the snow came and we kind of weren't prepared. So we ended up picking up a bunch of mill ends from a neighbor who had them left over from building his house. The problem is they were really high bark content, and bark doesn't burn very good, and it's really messy, and they were pretty wet, and so it's just a lot of problems. And even if you have the best wood stove in the world, but your wood's no good, well, you're gonna have a lot of problems, and we did. We struggled. Our chimney was constantly plugged. We had a hard time getting it to light. We couldn't really get a lot of heat out of it, so a lot of struggles. But one of the things that we did this summer was we made it a point to get a good harvest of high quality firewood. So last year we were burning a lot of pine and those types of species, which are notorious for creating creosote and soot. So this year we focused a lot on getting a more preferred species of wood. This is mostly tamarack or larch, and then we also got a lot of Doug fir. One of the other things that we had a chance to do was give the wood a little bit of time to season. The wood we picked up last year was super wet. It had been piled up for a couple of years and had a lot of moisture in it. And you basically spend all of your energy in that wood turning it into water or steam, and you don't get much heat out of it. So we piled all of our wood over here in the direct sunlight this summer and let it bake really, really good. And then before the rains came, we threw a nice big tarp over it to keep the water off of it. And those two things have made a huge step forward for our wood quality. We did have a couple of neighbors who had some wood that they weren't going to use, and they generously gave it to us. But the thing was, it was kind of back in that category of less ideal wood. This is actually a white pine, and a neighbor of ours has a white pine tree farm, and he had a bunch of dead standing, so he let us cut that. The thing is, this stuff is just riddled with sap. And it's also, you can see the growth rings. This is not a very dense wood. So ironically, there's not a lot of heat in this piece of wood compared to something like a tamarack or a fir, and it's got tons and tons of sap. And so, look at that. These things just make a sooty creosote mess of your wood stove and your chimney. I don't think that's the reason the neighbor gave us the wood. But anyways, we wanted to just get rid of this stuff as quick as we could early in the season. Don't get me wrong, this wood is still good wood because it burns, it makes heat. And I think that's a message that we could share about our experience with starting this off-grid journey, is that you kind of have to take what you can get at first. Yes, there are people around here who have 4 or 5 years worth of wood on hand, and it's so dry that they don't ever really have any sooting or creosote issues. But when you're first getting started, you have a million things going on, and so it's really the best you can do to just get wood and try to get it as dry as possible. But what we're hoping to do is have quite a bit of this wood left over from this season, and then we'll be able to season it for another summer again, which should help dry it out even more. And then the wood we harvest next summer, we'll be able to hold that over for 2 years, and that's a pretty ideal cycle. Unfortunately, because the wood that we've been burning is just kind of a headache, we actually already needed to do a chimney sweep and clean all the creosote and a lot of the soot buildup out of there. We were already having some burning issues. So what we did was just pull the cap off and, of course, used an 8-inch because we have an 8-inch chimney. 8-inch chimney brush, and Alyssa and I worked together to get all that buildup out of there, and it's just amazing how much better the wood stove drafts and flows when you don't have all that blockage. I know that seems like a no-brainer for a lot of folks, but there's a lot of folks out there that are new to burning wood and might not know those things. So we've been doing pretty good because we've been burning for a couple of months on moving through this kind of lesser quality wood, but we look forward to when we can get rid of all of it and then move on to the higher quality wood. The nice thing is we'll probably have a lot more heat with a lot less effort, and we'll probably have a lot less issues with the chimney. Because the stove is new to us, it's a lot of acclimating to understanding what makes it work the best, and most importantly, understanding your draft settings. The other stove that we had a very sloppy draft, and so even when it was fully closed, it still had a lot of leaks. These drafts, we have learned, are pretty precise, and we're getting much more confident with controlling the heat of the stove and getting longer burns instead of just burning through all of our wood. We can close the drafts down a long ways and keep all that heat in the firebox. The other thing is, early on we actually bought a gasket for the doors, and it didn't fit, and so we ended up taking it back off because it kept the doors from closing properly. And we weren't sure if we needed a gasket or not. It wasn't brutally obvious. There's actually a channel iron in here that the door seats into, and it seems to work fine without one. We feel like we have plenty of control over the fire, and the doors don't seem to be super leaky. So we're gonna kind of stick it out without one, and maybe down the road, if we find we need one, we'll pick one up. We did have one small issue. I was kind of aggressive with these doors a couple times, and we've already cracked one of the doors, which really sucks. These fishers are kind of known for that because these doors are cast. So hopefully that won't cause us any problems this winter, and maybe we can repair it next spring. Another really small upgrade that we did that has been hugely helpful is this flue thermometer. And it's $10, and it just makes such a huge difference. It's really helped us to understand what the stove is doing and how to be confident in your burn rates, and making sure that you're not just pumping all the heat out the chimney instead of keeping it here in the cabin. With this chimney, we did install a flue flapper because we weren't sure. Our other stove, we actually had to use the flapper quite a bit to control the burn, and that's mostly because the draft was so leaky. But this stove, we haven't actually had to use the flue flapper at all. The drafts are precise enough that we've just let that flow all the way through. One of the other problems we always have, or I guess there's really always a problem with wood heat, is air circulation. You have all this heat, but it's really just concentrated right here. And we know a lot of people have recommended to us these thermal fans, and we're going to be looking into those, but we don't have any yet. Last winter, what we picked up were these small, low amp draw circulating fans. And when we blow this across the chimney, it is incredible how much heat is dispersed in the cabin. So these are working really well for us now, but as you know, living off grid, everything takes power, and we can't run them without running the generator, so it's less than ideal. So hopefully we can look into getting some really good thermal fans, and those will kind of take the place of these guys. This hearth has been working fantastic. In fact, it's holding on to a tremendous amount of heat right now, which really helps at night, especially when the fire's kind of dying down. I think last night we were probably somewhere around upper 40s here in the cabin, and outside it was 0 degrees. So that thermal mass is really helping. And then there's kind of this hidden benefit. We've been sticking our gloves in there, and it's kind of nice because they dry out real quick, and then when you go to put them on, they're nice and toasty. And another random side benefit of having a cinder block hearth is I now have a place to put these Blinky light things that my dad makes and gives them to everybody, and pretty much everybody has the same reaction. What the heck am I gonna do with that? But he makes them, and so now I have a place to put my dad's Blinky light thing. If you've been following us for a while, you might remember that we were kind of afraid we were going to run out of wood last winter, and so we kind of went looking for something to get us through, and we found out that there was some secondhand fire logs available in our area, so we went and bought a bunch of them. Well, turns out winter ended really early, so all these fire logs laying around. In fact, they're taking up like 1/3 of our storage unit. And so we've been kind of finding a way to integrate them so we can both get rid of them, and then also to kind of find a benefit to having them. And one of the struggles we had last year was just getting the wood stove to burn long enough to get through a night so we could sleep. And it was really ruining our sleep habits. So this year, we've been working on getting an all-night burn so that there's still fire in the morning and it's really easy to light. And the key has been these fire logs. Some of the better wood, when we get to that, will actually do the trick too. But when we throw maybe 2 or 3 of these in at night, they're usually still glowing nice and red in the morning. So all of those details out of context probably aren't super helpful. Maybe it would kind of help to share a little bit about like what we're using wood heat for and its function here on our homestead. And we're actually not using the wood heat to create a living space. This cabin and all of our RV cover and all that is actually not meant to be a living space. It's meant as kind of like an Arctic entrance where it's a place to get dirty, store things, and ultimately to kind of keep our RV above freezing. And so that's really what we're trying to accomplish. And so as you can see right now in the cabin here, it's about 70 degrees. But near the front of our RV cover, where the ground is actually exposed, you're never going to get these temperatures, I don't care how big your wood stove is, because the ground is like a heat sink, and so it's sucking all the heat in. But that's actually okay because we keep our freezer and a lot of our canned foods and things that we want to preserve up near the front. So they stay semi-cool, while down here it's pretty warm and toasty. The other benefit of having the wood stove here is that by nature they dry things out. They're a desiccant because the warmth of the air sucks moisture and then it goes out your chimney. And because our cabin is super leaky, it's always pulling in fresh air. Because we have an RV, pretty important, they create a lot of condensation, showering, propane stove, propane heater, etc. And so the wood stove actually helps us by keeping that condensation inside here to a bare minimum. So those are some of the things we've been working on with our wood heat system, and it's all starting to come together. We feel like wood heat's fitting our life better, a lot more efficient system, a lot less headaches and such. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and as always, we'll link to our Facebook, Instagram, and blog in the description below, and we'll see you next time. Do you remember last winter when the neighbor came by to plow us out, and he went home and told his wife, "I think they're dead. There's no smoke coming out the chimney, and there's no tire tracks in the driveway." And she's like, "Go plow them out. What are you doing?" He's like, "What if they're dead in there? I don't want to go in there."